It was late, past midnight in Nashville. The studio was quiet, the air thick with smoke and the smell of old coffee. The session was almost over. They had recorded some good songs, solid hits for the new album. But he wanted one more. Something different. Someone suggested an old song. A really old one from the 1920s. A sentimental waltz. It was a strange choice for a man who had built his career on shaking his hips and snarling into a microphone. This wasn't rock and roll, this was something your grandparents would have danced to. He knew the song, he liked it, so he agreed. The musicians, the best in Nashville, picked up their instruments. They knew their parts. The arrangement was simple, elegant. A soft piano, a gentle guitar, the steady thump of a bass, and the whisper of brushes on a snare drum. The backup singers were ready, their harmonies tight and sweet. He stepped to the microphone. The producer, wanting to create a mood, had an idea. "Kill the lights," he said. The studio plunged into darkness, except for a single small spotlight on the singer and his sheet music. The control room glowed faintly behind the glass. They started the take. His voice was different. Not the raw power of his early hits. It was soft, intimate, almost a whisper. He sang the first verse with a kind of gentle sadness. It was a song about lost love, about a lonely room and an empty chair. He sounded like he was living every word. The band played perfectly. The harmonies from the backup singers were like ghosts in the dark. Everything was working. It was a beautiful recording, a classic in the making. And then they came to the middle section, the bridge. On the original 1920s recordings, this part wasn't sung. It was spoken. A dramatic recitation delivered with theatrical flair. It was a device from another time, from the world of vaudeville and melodrama. In 1960, it was hopelessly old-fashioned. No modern pop singer would do something like that. It was corny, it was risky, it could easily sound ridiculous. The music softened to a barely audible hum. And he started to speak. The question is why? Why did he do it? Why did this man, the biggest star in the world, the symbol of youth rebellion, choose to include a spoken word monologue from a dusty old song? It wasn't in any script for his new career. It wasn't part of a plan to win over a new audience. It was a choice made in a dark studio in the middle of the night. The answer isn't simple. It's not just one thing. It's about who he was at that exact moment in his life. It's about the army. It's about his mother. It's about Hollywood. And it's about the very nature of being a performer. To understand the spoken part, you have to understand the man in 1960. He was not the same person who had exploded onto the scene a few years earlier. That person was a raw, untamed force of nature. A kid from Mississippi who sang with a dangerous energy that scared parents and thrilled teenagers. He was pure instinct. But then the world intervened. He was drafted into the U.S. Army. For 2 years, he wasn't a rock and roll king. He was Private Presley, he got a regulation haircut, he wore a uniform. He followed orders, he drove a Jeep in Germany. This experience changed him. It had to. It forced a kind of discipline on him that he never had before. It also took him away from home, from his world, at the peak of his fame. And while he was in Germany, the worst thing imaginable happened. His mother, Gladys, died. He was devastated. She was the center of his universe, his biggest fan, his confidante. He flew home for the funeral, a broken man in a soldier's uniform. Then he had to fly back to Germany and finish his service. He was alone in a way he had never been before. The grief was immense, and he had to carry it far from home, surrounded by strangers. So when he returned to America in March 1960, he was different. He was older, not just in years, but in spirit. He had seen a world outside of Memphis and Hollywood. He had experienced profound loss. The boyish rebellion was gone, replaced by a more sober, more serious presence. His manager, the infamous Colonel Tom Parker, had a plan for this new mature version of his star. The rock and roll fad, he believed, wouldn't last forever. The future was in the mainstream. The future was movies, television specials, and Las Vegas. The future was becoming an all-around entertainer, someone who could appeal to everyone, not just teenagers. He needed to be more like Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin, a respectable adult performer. The singer himself seemed to agree with this path. He wanted a real acting career. He wanted to be taken seriously. The first music he recorded after the army reflected this shift. The songs were slicker, more polished. The production was bigger. His voice had changed too. It was richer, deeper, more controlled. He was singing, really singing, with a new kind of power and nuance. This is the man who walked into that Nashville studio. He was at a crossroads. He was trying to bridge the gap between the wild rock and roller he had been and the sophisticated entertainer he was supposed to become. He was looking for material that could showcase this new self. material with more emotional depth, material that required not just a voice but a performance. So when that old waltz from 1926 was suggested, it didn't seem so strange. He was a student of music. He loved all kinds of songs, from blues and gospel to opera and country. He had a deep respect for the performers who came before him. He knew the history of the song. He knew the spoken part was central to its original identity. The song was written by two men, Roy Turk and Lou Handman. See, they were professional songwriters from Tin Pan Alley, the music publishing hub of New York City. In the 1920s, songs were built to be performed on a stage, in a theater. The performers had to connect with a live audience, and they used every tool they had. Pathos, humor, drama. The spoken word recitation, or patter as it was sometimes called, was a common vaudeville trick. It was a way to break the fourth wall, to speak directly to the audience. The music would swell, then die down, and the singer would step forward and deliver a monologue. It was pure melodrama. It was designed to pull at the heartstrings. The first person to have a major hit with the song was a singer named Von DeLeeth. But the version that likely influenced him the most was by a man named Al Jolson. Jolson was one of the biggest stars of the era, a man famous for his hugely emotional, on-his-knees style of performance. When Jolson spoke the lines, it was high drama. Another version you might have heard was from a country singer, Blue Baron, or the Carter family. He also kept the spoken part. For them, it was part of the storytelling tradition of country music. So, for him, leaving the recitation in wasn't a weird, spontaneous addition. It was the opposite. It was a choice to honor the song's tradition, to take this old-fashioned theatrical element and see if he could make it work in 1960. See if he could make it feel real. And that's what happened when the lights went down in Studio B. The music fades. He takes a breath, and he begins to speak. His voice is low, hesitant. He sounds like he's thinking the words, not just reciting them. I wonder if you're lonesome tonight. It's a direct question. He's not singing to a faceless crowd. He's talking to one person. The person who left. The listener becomes that person. It's intimate. It's personal. Then he sets the scene. You know someone said that the world's a stage, and each must play a part. This line is the key to everything. That's a paraphrase from Shakespeare's As You Like It. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. By invoking Shakespeare, he elevates this simple, sentimental song into something more profound. It's not just about a breakup anymore, it's about life and fate, and the roles we are forced to play. And who understood this better than him? His entire life, since he was a teenager, had been a performance. Every move he made was watched, analyzed, and judged. He was playing the part of the world's biggest star. But what happened when the show was over, when the applause died down, and he was alone in a hotel room? He continues. Fate had me playing in love with you as my sweetheart. The language is a little stilted, a little old-fashioned. In love as a role to be played, but it works because it's part of the metaphor. Love wasn't just a feeling, it was a scene in a play. Act 1 was when we met. I loved you at first glance. He sounds nostalgic, remembering something beautiful. You read your lines so cleverly and never missed a cue. There's a hint of something else here. Was it all just an act for her? Was she just a good actress? Then came Act 2. You seemed to change, you acted strange, and why I'll never know. The confusion, the hurt, it's all there in his voice, the slight tremble. He sounds genuinely lost. This is where his own experience of loss, his own grief, seeps into the performance. He's channeling something real. Honey, you lied when you said you loved me, and I had no cause to doubt you. The accusation is soft, more sad than angry. It's the sound of betrayal. But I'd rather go on hearing your lies than to go on living without you. This is the emotional climax of the monologue. The desperation, the willingness to accept a fiction over a painful reality. It's a devastatingly vulnerable thing to admit. And then he brings the metaphor home. Now the stage is bare, and I'm standing there with emptiness all around. And if you won't come back to me, then they can bring the curtain down. The stage is bare, it's the lonely room from the song's first verse, but it's also his life without his mother. It's his life without love, it's the silence after the screaming crowds are gone. It's the ultimate loneliness of a performer whose audience has left. He's not just reciting lines from an old song. He's telling his own story. He's using the theatricality of the monologue to express a genuine, deep-seated fear of being alone. The script he's reading from is not just the one on the music stand, it's the one written by his own life. When he finishes speaking, there is a moment of silence in the dark studio. The musicians are captivated. Then, the music gently swells back up, the backup singers coo their soft harmonies, and he sings the final lines of the song, his voice full of a heartbreaking resignation. They only did one complete take, that was it. The producer in the control room knew they had captured something magical. There was no need to do it again. It was perfect in its imperfection. The slight hesitation in his voice, the raw emotion. It was real. The decision to keep the spoken part, to perform it with such sincerity, was a stroke of genius. It transformed a pleasant, sentimental ballad into a profound statement. It became the song's signature, the thing everyone remembers. It also did exactly what his manager wanted, but in a way the Colonel could never have planned. It showed the world a new side of him. It proved he could handle complex emotions. He wasn't just a body, a hairstyle, a sneer. He was an artist, a dramatic interpreter. The song went to #1 on the charts. It was a huge commercial success. But it was also an artistic triumph. It validated his new direction. The spoken word part became so iconic that it even led to one of his most famous and humanizing moments years later. By 1969, he was the king of Las Vegas. His live shows were legendary. He performed this song every night. It was a serious, dramatic moment in the show. But one night, during a late show at the International Hotel, something went wrong. Or right, depending on how you look at it. He was in the middle of the spoken recitation. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. He got to the line, "Honey, you lied when you said you loved me." Just then, he saw something in the audience. A man took off his toupee, wiped his bald head with a napkin, and put the hairpiece back on. Right in the front row. The sight was so absurd, so out of place in this moment of high drama, that he started to crack. He tried to continue. "And I had no cause to doubt you." A little chuckle escaped. He kept going, "But I'd rather go on hearing your lies." He couldn't hold it in. A giggle turned into a laugh. He tried to stifle it, but it was no use. The audience, at first confused, began to laugh with him. He was supposed to be singing the next line, but his backup singer, Cissy Houston, sang it for him, her voice full and clear. He looked over at her, completely losing his composure. He was now laughing so hard he could barely stand. The band kept playing, trying to hold the song together. He tried to speak the final lines. "Now the stage is bare," he managed, before dissolving into another fit of laughter. The song fell apart in a beautiful, hilarious mess. This recording, which was captured by a soundboard operator, became known as the Lawing version. It was eventually released and became a hit in its own right. It's a cherished recording for his fans because it shows the man behind the icon. It shows his humor, his fallibility. It shows that even in the middle of a performance about heartbreak, he could be overcome by a moment of pure, silly joy. But it also shows the power of the original. The reason the laughing version is so funny is because the spoken word part is normally so serious, so intensely dramatic. He created a moment of such theatrical tension that when it broke, it was explosive. So why did he add a spoken word part that wasn't in the script for his career? He didn't really add it, he chose to keep it. He chose to embrace a piece of theatrical history that everyone else had forgotten. And he did it because it spoke to him. It spoke to the man who was playing the part of a lifetime. It spoke to the soldier who had lost his mother and had to grieve in a foreign land. It spoke to the star who was navigating a treacherous career change, trying to prove he was more than a passing fad. The world was his stage, love was a play, and loneliness was the feeling of standing in the spotlight after the curtain comes down. He knew that feeling better than anyone. In that dark Nashville studio, he wasn't just recording a song. He was holding up a mirror to his own life. He took an old-fashioned, melodramatic piece of writing and filled it with so much genuine emotion, so much of his own truth, that it became timeless. He made it real, that's why he did it, that's why it worked, and that's why all these years later, people still listen and feel that same chill when the music fades and his lonely voice asks the question, "Are you lonesome tonight?"